So let's talk about the Earth Realm's reset order of operations and why this particular reset needs to be done in a specific order, meaning that the woman of Revelations 12 needs to bring in a new photon light being into the realm to disrupt the magnetic resonance or the set magnetic field of Earth, which is contained within the magnetic sphere. By her bringing in this new or birthing this new sun into the realm, it then squeezes the mathematics of this space, meaning that we only have so much of this magnetic field to share, meaning that this is a tightly coiled system and everything is kind of pre-mapped out. And if you bring any new energy into this, it's kind of like cymatics, where you take the salt and put it on the plate and you vibrate that using a sound or frequency, and the salt takes the path of least resistance. We're talking about this vortex that is created within this magnetic sphere, creating a magnetic field or G force, or as they call it, centrifugal force. And this is what is causing a magnetic resonance to cause all matter that exists within this realm to take the path of least resistance and stick onto the light coding of each individual person. So let's start from the beginning so we can discuss this reset math and why it's so important to have an order of operations in regards to how this particular event happens. We are talking about the difference between whether the son is born and this boy is brought into the world to disrupt the magnetic resonance versus we just allow he never gets born and the sun is just allowed to fade to black on its own or slowly die out over time. Let's discuss the difference of how that would happen and why it's so important for him to be born so that he can spark this particular new sun to be birthed, so that we don't lose everything in the realm and have to redo this process or this part all over again. So when you're talking about the creation of Earth realm, so you had two beings that came and using two lodestone magnets. Basically, they're polar opposite type of magnet, the lodestones, and these were very large lodestones. So just imagine within outer space, in the void, as the Bible spoke of, darkness was upon the face of the deep. The face of the deep is Tiamat, which is the melanin based water that contains all of the periodic table of elements. So just think about it having elements that exist within the periodic table of elements are within this melanin based water. Okay, there's melanin in the water and there are elements. Okay, so these two beings come and they take these lodestone opposite male, female, north, south magnets, and they are huge magnets. Okay, and these two magnets start out together, like they're crunched together, and then these two magnets are slowly pulled apart to create a magnetic bubble, and this is what you call the process of pragmatism. Okay, so as they are pulling these two magnets together, the sphere is being created, and the sphere itself is being created and has a dipole, basically, of a vortex right in the center. It's just naturally created by these two magnets being separate. But there's a process that happens when you are using these two magnets within this water. Okay, so because there's melanin in the water, because there's these different elements in the water, and there's also just the water. When you filter out the melanin, using these two lodestone magnets kind of sifts everything into its place. Okay, so this is the process by which it happens. And this is what the book of Genesis is describing when it's talking about how the earth realm was created. So as you separate these two magnets, this sphere is then formed. This is a magnetic sphere. It is almost virtually impenetrable. You cannot touch these two lodestone magnets. You can't shoot anything through the sky or the dome to get anything to go beyond this point, because this is a very protective layer. Okay, and basically the magnets were pulled apart, and as the magnets were pulled apart, the melanin in the water, because once you create this pragmatic bubble, it forms oxygen. Okay, naturally it just creates a bubble that has oxygen inside, right? Because the oxygen or the elements are reacting with this newfound air that is being placed within this magnetic sphere. Okay, so as it is basically engaging, the melanin is engaging with the oxygen, it basically sets on fire, right? So this is how you get a sun on both sides, because each magnet has its own ball. It's kind of like it sifted out the melanin from the waters. Okay, and the waters were left behind right here in the middle, along with all of the periodic table of elements. So this is all of your layers that we call the earth's crust, with all the metals, all the minerals, everything is in it, right? And this is the ball of melanin that was sifted out per magnet. And once it engaged with the oxygen, it set on fire, creating a sparked sun. So the inner corona of the sun is a ball of melanin, okay? And it's kind of like fusion energy. It doesn't necessarily die, it has free radicals. So it can be reignited if need be. However, just remember that at its core, the sun is the melanin from these dark waters. Okay. So once that was all sifted out, all of the periodic table of elements kind of smushed right here in the middle, creating the firm ground. And that's why you have all these mountainous ranges and all these different, rocks and formations that are kind of scattered throughout the realm. And there's no particular order. And there's water bunched up in diverse places because as this all sifted out, it was kind of like basically a filtering of the water to create the waters of the Apsu, as they called it, or the ancient Sumerians or the ancient Akkadians called the Apsu, which is the clear waters that were left behind after the melanin was extracted in the form of these two balls, right? However, that's not the end of this. So you have the magnetic vortex that is in the center, and there's folklore surrounding this, talking about this wormhole that goes into inner Earth, basically. So there's another underside of this, and they basically have their own sun, and they are underneath us. It's kind of the as above, so below, and if you follow the Genesis story, after these magnets sifted everything out, it separated the sun, it created this land. There was also another process which created a glass dome that made Earth sort of a terrarium space. And this process was by the element osmium that naturally exists within the waters or the elements. Osmium, as it was being sifted out, started to burn just like the sun started, the melanin of the sun started to burn. The osmium started to burn as well. And when the osmium burns with oxygen, it creates OSO4, which is osmium tetroxide. It's a form of glass. That's why they say that we are in a glass dome. And basically, Oz, you can say the Wizard of Oz or the Crystal City, basically, is what was formed when this particular osmium interacted through the process of osmosis, okay, which is separating or it's kind of like a filtering, basically, using oxygen to create this osmium tetroxide glass, okay? So you have the dome, you have the two suns that are now ignited, and then you have the mapping, because you have a magnetic resonance here that's created by the vortex, and this energy is kind of going in a dipole, basically in all directions all around. Okay, so this magnetic resonance and this magnetic sphere is magnetic. Okay, so in order for us to then create life, or to basically emanate life, and to bring everything into a matter-based existence, you had to do a light mapping. Okay, and this is where the moon machine and the alloy balls that are the stars come into play. So these beings pulled the magnets apart, they created the realm, and then they went ahead and put this moon machine into the atmosphere, which is a machine that contains 12 gates of light. And I will place a diagram in here kind of explaining exactly how that works. But these 12 gates of light project onto these alloy balls that creates a light diagram of mapping, which is 196 squares. It's a Lycra number that cannot be reversed. So you're talking about a grid that's basically being created of light projections, okay? And once these light projections were mapped out, meaning that all beings, animals, fish, people, even the people who came here to do this particular thing, which in essence, they were coming to mine the gold out of Tiamat's veins, which is talking about her primordial waters. You couldn't get the gold out, and yet unless you separated the realm up and you opened it up so you can actually get the elements or the gold within the land, and then you can come in, map out your light body, and map out the beings, okay, the animals and everything. That's why in the book of Genesis, when they're talking about the creation of the earth realm, it kind of goes in that natural order. You have the division from the darkness of the face of the deep. You have the sun was created, it was good, and then the lesser lights and the moon were placed in the sky to do the light mapping, and then that's when all life started to spring forth. And actually, once the dome itself was created, it created a terrarium type experience where the elements here started to dry, because now you have dry land appearing, as Genesis says, and then all of the seeds that pre-existed there start to sprout into trees. Okay, so this was like the natural order of things. And then these two beings put these physical alloy balls into the sky to create a light mapping. The 12 gates of light that are within the moon machine basically all have their own 30-degree angle of light that is being projected out of the machine itself, using xenon as a luminiferous element to create this light that projects onto each of these alloy balls in various directions. These shapes are polyminos and heptaminos, okay? And that's basically a description of like these complex shapes that are producing all of these various angles of light. It is a light mapping, okay, using the moon machine and the stars and the alloy balls. Okay, so then you had the magnetic resonance that's created by the vortex, which then caused all matter. Because if you look at humans, animals, and all of us at a microscopic level, and you break it all the way down to what's in the skin, what's in the organs, what's in the cells, what creates all of existence in terms of our physical matter-based bodies, we are all comprised of the elements that come out of here. So this whole part about God forming man from the dust of the ground is talking about when the magnetic resonance was created. And once this light mapping was done, all of the elements begin to just latch on to the light angles, like boom, 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 boom. It started to create all of these various beings, right? And the two beings that came here to map this out, meaning the two witnesses or those two most powerful male and female deities or gods, they are the ones who map this out, and they map themselves out within this star system so that they could physically exist, and so that they could begin the process of doing the groundwork to create this realm so that they could mine the gold from Tiamat's veins that in the future would keep the sun from dying by creating gold dust and putting it in the atmosphere so the sun doesn't die out, or its energy doesn't die out over time, using the gold as a conductive material that kind of reflects the energy back into the sun's fusion energy engine, so that once we generate this new sun, the sun no longer dies out. This is what your description in the Bible is about, talking about there will be no more night there and all that stuff, right? So let's get into the order of operations. And I have a math problem here that pretty much explains that. You're talking about 22 divided by 7, which is the math of pi. And you're going to use the 3 6 to get to the 9. And this is the secret of the math of 3 6 3 6 9. You're talking about 3 squared, which equals 9. Okay. And you're going to do this math to equal out the divine masculine math of the realm. Okay. So once the sun is born, you're talking about the connection between the divine masculine and the divine feminine, creating or opening this sixth seal. Okay. And this is a representation of sexual intercourse between this divine masculine and feminine, giving birth to the sun. And this is the spark that is needed to bring new energy, because like I said before, he has never existed within the realm. This magnetic resonance is set. There's really no room for a being of his magnitude to come into here, because by him being birthed into the system, it is causing the disruption of all of the magnetic resonance, meaning that everything is being shifted because he's being born. Okay. So, and he's a very large entity. He's not like everyone else. He was born from a seraphim egg, and he himself is a very large being. These beings are giants. That's why their energy is so massive. They are not like everyone else. Okay. So once the sun is born, he is then forced into the magnetic resonance of the earth realm, which is why you see so many earthquakes happening in this day and age, because this particular mathematics is coming undone as he, a new photon light being, is coming into the realm. It's triggering volcanoes, it's triggering the earth to kind of come or move about in different places. That's why in Revelation 6:12, it talks about the mountains moving out of their places, because imagine this big energy squeezing into a very tight space and kind of just moving everything out of place, moving the land masses out of place, causing volcanoes and earthquakes and everything to kind of go crazy, right? So once that happens, naturally what's going to happen is going to overwhelm the moon machine. Okay. And this is why in Revelation 6:12 it says that the moon turns as blood, because the machine within the moon, which is an alloy ball, okay, and this machine overheats because it's overloaded. What happens when tech overloads? It turns it, or it heats up, and it will turn this metal ball red. Okay. So whenever you see the moon being red, that means it's overloading. Okay. For whatever reason, some people are probably swiping data out of it or getting downloads, so it starts to overheat as we pull the information from the vanadium dioxide smart glass that exists within the system. Okay. During different parts of Earth's revolving. So basically he causes earthquakes, everything shifts out of its place, and then it actually sparks the sun to basically implode, or this outer layer to come off of the sun, because everything is held together by the magnetic resonance. Okay, so when this is disrupted and this energy is pushed in, it's going to force the suns to kind of go poof. Okay, so their outer layer will shed, and that melanin that was initially inside of it will be sparked again, because you have this energy that is causing the spark by pushing the energy out. Okay, so the magnetic sphere will remain intact. However, the sun will be sparked by this new energy coming in, and it's kind of like a reset order of operations. In order for you to get a new sun, you have to bring in a new sun, and this new sun will spark the set of the new sun, which you start off with and this is where the red Kachina, blue Kachina, Hopi prophecies come into play, because you're talking about the red sun, which is the exploding of it once the sun comes in, and then it's going to be back to black, which is basically the darkest and densest form of lights. It is the melanin type of energy that comes from Tiamat, or the melanin is the original energy of this sun. However, because it was sparked by this new energy coming in, and the coronal explodes, and all of that energy goes into the earth realm, it enters all the light, photon light beings, meaning that we absorb some of it if we can. Things that cannot absorb this photon light energy basically turns to crystals, which is why it talks about a crystal city within the Bible, or you have these different mythologies surrounding a crystal city.